Here's my honest Bowers & Wilkins Px7 S2e review and whether they're worth it in 2025. At the time of this recording, they just announced the Px7 S2e, but this is still a really great headphone, and today we're going to be comparing it against all of its direct competitors, including the Sennheiser Momentum 4, the Apple AirPods Max, Bose QuietComfort Ultra, Sony WH-1000XM5, and the Sonos Ace. Hey there, Odie from RecordingNow.com. We're on a mission to create the most comprehensive database of honest, unbiased headphone and wireless earbud reviews, head-to-head comparisons, and overall rankings to help you make a more informed purchase. Did you know you can save up to $100 or more on any of these headphones by shopping for them renewed or used? I was able to get this pair for just $187 in like-new condition, and I can tell you that these are pretty much mint. Links to where you can save up to $100 or more will be in the video description or in the pinned comment below. Let us know in the comments if you're able to get a good deal on any of these headphones. And visit recordingnow.com or Google Recording Now to see the rest of our content. So if you're new here, we're going to break down every single category and give an objective score to these headphones so you can compare them against any of the headphones on the website. Now, starting with comfort, the Px7 S2e weighed in at 305.2 grams, which is actually the third heaviest headphone in this class. The only two heavier headphones are the Sonos Ace and the AirPods Max. So I actually find the Bowers & Wilkins to be extremely comfortable, and I really like the plushness of the memory foam ear pad cushions specifically. To me, these feel almost as nice as the memory foam ear pad cushions on the Sonos Ace. I also think that the headband creates very little top of head pressure, although it could probably use a little bit more cushioning, but the width of the headband is able to distribute the weight pretty evenly. There's some pretty good interior space for my ears to be free inside of the ear cup. So overall, I find these headphones to be very comfy and a little bit more comfy than the Sennheiser Momentum 4 and the AirPods Max, but perhaps just slightly less comfy than the class-leading QC Ultra and Sonos Ace. I would say that my critiques are the weight, which is felt, and I think that the clamping force from the factory is just a tad strong, but it seems to be loosening up. So overall for comfort, I'm giving the Px7 a 4.5 out of 5. Now, moving on to features, build quality, battery life, and noise canceling performance, which we'll combine into a single score. So starting with this nice premium hardshell case, along with this little magnetic compartment right here for the cables. The S2e was released in September 2023 and has your typical modern wireless active noise canceling features like the multiple microphones for taking calls, active noise canceling in transparency mode, the ability to turn either of them off, the companion smartphone app to customize EQ settings and update the firmware. So these are pretty much your typical modern wireless ANC headphones. Now, moving on to the build quality. These headphones feel very premium for the price. They feature metal here on the exterior of the ear cups and it feels very nice. They seem to be using a premium grain leather on the ear pad cushions and on the headband. And on the exterior, they have this fabric material for the headband. Now, my only issue is that it feels like they're using plastic here for these hinges, and I also think that this hinge design, although it looks cool, I do worry if this could be a failure point in the future, but so far so good. So if anyone has any feedback on how these hinges perform over time, let us know in the comments below. Moving on to battery life, the Px7 S2e is rated at 30 hours of battery life on a single charge, which is slightly above average. This is longer than the AirPods Max and QC Ultra, tied with the Sony WH-1000XM5 and Sonos Ace at that 30 hours, but has half the battery life of the class-leading Sennheiser Momentum 4 at 60 hours. Alright, so moving on to the noise canceling performance. Overall, I found the noise canceling to be decent, but not elite, like the class-leading Bose QC Ultra, Sony WH-1000XM5, and now the Sonos Ace. I definitely think that noise canceling is one of the weaker points of these headphones and is about on par with the AirPods Max and the Momentum 4, maybe even a little bit slightly worse depending on the situation. I think one of the reasons is because of these rectangular ear cups with a bit of a large opening versus something like the Sonos Ace that creates a very strong physical seal. The way these fit might be a reason why there's not as much of that passive noise isolation. So overall, for features, build quality, battery life, and noise canceling performance, we're giving the Px7 S2e a 4.5 out of 5, just missing out due to that noise canceling. All right, so moving on to sound quality, which is something I was very curious about with the Bowers & Wilkins brand. Now, there is a customizable EQ inside of the smartphone app, and if you watch any of our other videos or visit the website, I usually develop a custom EQ for all of these headphones to get the most sound quality potential out of them. Now, interestingly, I actually found that the stock sound of the Px7 S2e was very good, and combined with the fact that I'm not really a fan of this simple 2-band EQ like the Sonos Ace and like this Bowers & Wilkins where they only have bass and treble, I typically don't find these limited EQs to be as good as even a 3-band EQ like the Bose QC Ultra. So I'm going to be testing this stock, but if I come up with an EQ setting that improves these, then of course I will add them to the website. But like I said, the stock sound signature was really pleasing to my ear. There's nothing offensive about it, and I actually think that right out of the box, these have just unseated the Apple AirPods Max as having the most pleasant stock sound tuning. Now, to my surprise, the sound signature is something like a crossover between the Momentum 4 and the Bose QC Ultra, both with my custom EQ settings. And those are two of the best sounding headphones in this class. So Bowers & Wilkins describes the S2e as having this 24-bit DSP with custom designed 40mm drive units and using biocellulose drivers. So there's a high-end audiophile headphone brand called ZMF that also has used biocellulose drivers, and that's the last time that I've heard of that term. What I think that translates to for the Px7 S2e is that I think these have the tightest sound in this class. So when it comes to something like the bass, it's very controlled and it's very focused, and when you listen to vocals and instruments, there's a certain weightiness to them and everything just sounds very crisp. Now, speaking of the bass, there's not as much slam and sub bass response, so something like the Momentum 4 has more bass quantity and slam, but these are cleaner. So adding on to that point about the biocellulose drivers, what I'm hearing is better dynamics with these headphones. There's a lot of depth to the sound, so these have a lot more ability to pick up nuances such as hi-hats and cymbals. And overall, I'm just hearing more resolution than pretty much all of the headphones in this class other than the EQ'd QC Ultra. So where I think these shine is having probably the most realistic and natural timbre to vocals and instruments. Now, if we're to critique these headphones, I think that the soundstage width is a bit too narrow and intimate. They don't sound as open as the QC Ultra, and I prefer the spacing and imaging of the Bose QC Ultra. Despite not sounding as accurate, I'm able to get better separation and layering from the Bose. So due to that sound signature and the narrow soundstage, these do have a little bit of a muffled and veiled aspect to it, and I'd say the last flaw is really needing a bit more of that sub bass response and that slam, although it is a clean bass that honestly still works for the modern genres like pop, hip hop, and EDM. It's still enjoyable, but if you're a bass head, you're gonna want more slam. That said, I do think these shine much more for the acoustic genres and rock and metal, classical and jazz. That is where these headphones are the strongest and the most impressive. So overall for sound quality, I'm giving the Px7 S2e an 8.9 out of 10, and that's completely stock. I do think these are now the standard for sound quality in this price range of the sub $500 headphones, and the fact that it doesn't even need EQ to reach this score is something that is really special. So moving on to value, these have a very interesting market price right now, and as I've said in the beginning, I actually got this pair for just $187 in like new condition, renewed on Amazon, but this headphone does retail at $399, and the market price fluctuates anywhere from that full $399 all the way down to $249 brand new. Now, I'll say even at full retail, if we're talking about that $400 price point, I think these are way more worth it than something like the Sony XM5 at its full retail price, or the $549 AirPods Max. But if we were to take the average price of these, which seems to hover around that $300, that means this headphone is competing pretty much head to head with the Sennheiser Momentum 4 as one of the best values in this class. So depending on the actual price, I do think these are worth that full retail, but as they go down lower and lower in price, the value is going to be a better score. But overall, overall, we're just going to average it out and we're going to give these a 4.5 out of 5 on account of just having that best stock sound quality. But you are giving up some of that noise canceling performance. And like I said, if it is that full retail price, it's not as good of a value, but it's arguably a better value than other headphones in this class. So overall, the Bowers & Wilkins Px7 S2e receives a 9 out of 10. I really think that the only major flaw to these is probably having one of the weaker active noise canceling performances. When it comes to comfort, I find these more comfortable than the Momentum 4, the AirPods Max, and I could see some people actually giving these a perfect score for comfort. I wouldn't argue with that. Again, that sound quality, I just think, is the new standard for the sub $400 wireless active noise canceling headphone class. So overall for me right now, at the time of this video, I would say that it's a pretty hard choice between the EQ'd Bose QC Ultra and the Px7 S2e, both of which are roughly around the same sound quality level, just different flavors. Now, if the QC Ultra is available for $349, I do think that is a better overall value because you have better comfort and you also have superior active noise canceling performance, not to mention comparable sound quality. And interestingly enough, I was actually testing these back to back by watching TV and movies, and I actually found that I did prefer the openness and the better sense of space and stereo separation of the QC Ultra over the Px7 S2e. So I think that is an interesting comparison that does translate into music listening as well. But I will say that the timbre of the Bowers & Wilkins is better than the QC Ultra, despite the Ultra being more detailed in certain cases. Now, if you found this comprehensive review useful, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment below if you have any questions at all about either of these headphones or any of the headphones on the website. If you need help making a decision, would love to help you out. Again, there's links to where you can save up to $100 or more in the video description and in a pinned comment below. If you love audio as much as we do, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell because we have a ton more premium Bluetooth headphone models coming on the way this year. Lastly, visit recordingnow.com or Google Recording Now to see the rest of our headphone content, rankings, and comparisons. Thanks for watching and happy listening.